families in the state, I realized something was terribly wrong. I was standing near the edge of the ballroom, watching my only child, Lily, move through her wedding like an angel wrapped in satin and pearls. Everything around us sparkled. The chandeliers, the mirrored walls, the designer gowns, even the champagne bubbling in crystal flutes. It was the kind of wedding people posted online just to say they had been there. But as Lily held her bouquet and posed beside her groom, Grant Whitford, I felt a pressure in my chest that no celebration could silence. Grant, tall and perfectly polished, kept one hand wrapped so tightly around her waist that it looked more like possession than affection. Lily kept smiling, but her eyes never lifted with joy. She looked like someone performing a role she no longer remembered agreeing to play. I told myself I was imagining things. I told myself every mother gets emotional at her daughter's wedding. But when the music shifted and the host called Lily forward to toss her bouquet, something inside me whispered a warning. I ignored it until the bouquet sailed through the air, twisting with white roses and eucalyptus leaves, and landed directly in my hands. People cheered. I forced a smile and adjusted the flowers, and that was when I saw it, a small piece of folded paper tucked between the stems. Thinking it was a message from the bridesmaids, I pulled it out gently. 4 shaky words stared back at me. "Mom, please save me?" The ballroom spun. For a moment, I could not hear the music or the applause or the chatter of 200 guests dressed in diamonds and silk. All I could see was my daughter standing on that platform, her smile painted on, her shoulders stiff, her groom's hand gripping her like a warning. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. And from that moment on, I knew I would tear down this entire fairy tale wedding if I had to, but I was not leaving without my daughter. In the seconds after reading that note, everything I had ignored over the past months came crashing back with painful clarity. I lifted my eyes toward Lily again, and suddenly every small detail felt like a warning I should have seen sooner. Her smile did not reach her eyes, her shoulders were too tight, and Grant stood beside her like a shadow that refused to let her breathe. I watched as a group of guests approached them. Grant accepted every compliment with the confidence of a man used to being admired, but Lily's responses were short, almost mechanical. Each time she glanced away or tried to step aside, Grant's hand subtly tightened around her waist, guiding her back to where he wanted her to stand. Not beside him, I realized, under him. The memory of their early months together flickered through my mind. Lily had introduced Grant to me as if he were a miracle she had somehow won. He had charmed her with flowers, dinners in expensive places, and little gestures that made her feel chosen. She had glowed then. I had believed her glow. But slowly, that glow dimmed. The calls home became less frequent. The cheerful energy she used to bring into every room began to fade. At the time, I told myself it was simply the stress of wedding planning. Even when she canceled our weekly lunches or kept checking her phone nervously, I accepted her explanations without question. Now, watching her, I finally understood. This was not stress, this was fear. When Lily excused herself to greet her bridesmaids, Grant followed her immediately, barely giving her space to move on her own. One of the girls tried to show her something funny on a phone, but Lily glanced at Grant first before reacting, as if seeking permission to laugh. I felt a cold panic rising. My daughter was not celebrating her wedding. My daughter was enduring it. And as I clutched the bouquet tighter, the hidden note inside it felt heavier than the roses themselves. Before I could act, my mind dragged me back to the months leading up to this moment. The signs had been there, scattered like crumbs I should have followed sooner. At first, Grant had seemed almost too perfect. Lily told me he opened doors, remembered tiny details about her childhood stories, and made her feel seen in ways she had never experienced before. She described him as thoughtful, polished, and endlessly attentive. But the shift came quietly. 2 months into their relationship, Lily stopped wearing a few of her favorite outfits. When I asked, she brushed it off with a soft laugh, saying Grant preferred a more classic look. Soon after, she changed her hairstyle because he said it framed her face better. Then came the subtle digs masked as jokes. Comments like "you're adorable when you try to sound smart," or "that client only hired you because you look sweet." Lily repeated those comments to me with a smile, as if they were harmless. But I remember the way her hands tightened in her lap each time she said them. Grant also insisted on having the passwords to her phone and laptop. No secrets between us, he had said. Lily repeated the line like it was romantic. I remember feeling uneasy, but she looked happy, so I smothered my questions. Then came the moment she tried to hide. Once she visited me wearing long sleeves in the middle of July. When she reached for a plate, the cuff slid up, revealing faint bruises shaped like fingers. I froze. She yanked the sleeve down so fast the fabric nearly tore. "What happened?" I asked. "Just bumped into something," she whispered. But she wouldn't meet my eyes. More canceled plans followed, more anxious glances over her shoulder, more excuses that didn't sound like her. I tried to bring it up gently, but she shut me out completely, insisting everything was fine. Now, standing in that ballroom with her note burning in my palm, I finally saw the truth I had pushed aside. Grant hadn't just charmed her. He had swallowed her whole. And this wedding, this glittering celebration, was not the beginning of her new life. It was the final lock on her cage. The moment I slipped the note back into the bouquet, the ballroom no longer felt like a celebration. It felt like a stage set carefully to hide something dark behind its gold-trimmed curtains. I watched Lily closely, trying not to panic, trying not to run to her and pull her away from everything right then and there. But I knew I could not act impulsively, not with Grant's family standing like sentinels near the head table, not with 200 guests recording every move, and not with Lily already so fragile she looked like one wrong word might shatter her. I scanned the room, searching for someone who might have noticed what I had started to see, but everyone else saw only glamour, wealth, and the surface-level beauty that Grant and his parents had perfected. They saw a glossy magazine wedding. Only I saw my daughter's shoulders locked in place, as if she was bracing for something invisible. When Lily tried to step aside to greet her childhood friend, Grant shifted with her, blocking her path with a smile that never reached his eyes. She laughed nervously and stayed put. He leaned in and whispered something against her ear. Her knuckles tightened around her bouquet, and for a moment she stopped breathing. My grip on the roses slipped. I forced myself to breathe. I had to think clearly. I had to help her. But if I confronted Grant in front of everyone, he would twist the story instantly. A wealthy family with powerful connections could crush us before the truth ever saw daylight. I pressed the bouquet to my chest and whispered to myself, "Stay calm." Because one thing was clear now. Lily wasn't just unhappy. She was afraid. And whatever she feared was close enough to keep her quiet, yet desperate enough to make her hide a note in her own wedding bouquet. At that moment, I made a silent promise. I would not leave this place without my daughter. Not tonight, not like this. I realized I needed help, and I needed it fast. Grant never left Lily's side for more than a few seconds, so getting her alone would take a plan. A precise one. And there were only 3 people in the entire ballroom I trusted enough for something this delicate. Her bridesmaids. Tessa, Brianna, and Holly had known Lily since college. They were the kind of friends who stayed up with her during heartbreaks, celebrated her small victories, and protected her fiercely even when she insisted she did not need protecting. If anyone could help me reach her, it was them. I waited until Grant was pulled away by one of his uncles, then I walked quickly toward their table, bouquet clutched against my chest like a shield. They were laughing about something on a phone, but the moment they saw my face, the laughter faded. "I need your help," I said quietly, leaning in so no one nearby could hear. "Lily is in danger." The 3 of them blinked in unison, and then Tessa, always the boldest, whispered, "Miss Ellison, what are you talking about?" I pulled the folded note from the flowers and showed it to them beneath the tablecloth. Their expressions changed instantly. Brianna covered her mouth. Holly's eyes watered. Tessa looked furious. "We have to get her away from Grant," I said. "I don't care how, but we cannot leave her alone with him for another minute." The girls exchanged a series of quick glances, and I could practically see the unspoken agreement forming between them. They did not need convincing. They only needed instructions. I gave each of them a simple task. "Tessa," I said, "you go first. Tell Lily there's a private tradition for brides. Get her to step away with you. Make it sound urgent." Tessa nodded firmly. "Brianna," I continued, "you distract Grant. Ask him about business, his parents, anything that will keep him in one place." Brianna straightened her shoulders. "I can do that." "Holly," I said, turning to the gentlest of the 3, "you position yourself between Grant and Lily. If he tries to follow, slow him down. Ask for a picture. Ask him about the playlist. Anything." Holly swallowed hard but nodded. Once Lily is away from the crowd, I said, take her to the garden behind the ballroom. I'll meet you there. They stood up at the same time, no hesitation in their movements. For the first time that night, I felt hope stir inside me. We were going to get my daughter back. I hurried toward the back garden, slipping out of the ballroom before anyone noticed. The night air felt cold against my skin, a sharp contrast to the warm, crowded room I had just escaped. I moved past the hedges and string lights until I reached the small stone fountain we had chosen as the meeting point. And there they were. Lily sat on the fountain's edge, Bouquet tossed carelessly beside her, her hands gripping the skirt of her dress, as if it were the only thing keeping her together. Tessa stood beside her, arms folded tightly. Holly hovered near the path, watching for anyone who might come looking. Brianna paced back and forth, muttering under her breath. When Lily lifted her head and saw me, her composure crumbled. Her eyes, once bright and full of life, were red and glassy. Tears clung to her lashes. "Mom," she whispered, her voice cracking. I rushed to her side and took her trembling hands into mine. "I found your note." She closed her eyes as if hearing those words allowed her to finally release everything she had been holding inside. A soft, broken sob escaped her. I didn't know what else to do. He never lets me go anywhere alone. I thought he would follow me even into the restroom. "What is he doing to you?" I asked gently. For a moment she couldn't speak. She curled in on herself, shoulders shaking. Tessa placed a protective hand on Lily's back. "He doesn't hit," Lily finally whispered. "Not with fists, he's too smart for that. But he grabs me. Hard. He squeezes my arms when he's angry. My shoulders, my wrists. And if I say anything he doesn't like, he talks to me like I'm beneath him. Like I'm a problem he needs to fix." My stomach twisted. She wiped at her face, mascara smearing. "He told me if I tried to call off the wedding, he'd make sure you lost your job. He said his family has connections everywhere." "Mom," I was so scared. I cupped her face in my hands. "You're safe now. You are not going back in there alone. I promise you that." Lily leaned into me, sobbing quietly, and for the first time since this nightmare began, she allowed herself to fall apart. And I held her together. I helped Lily stand, steadying her as her legs trembled beneath the weight of everything she had been carrying alone. Her dress was slightly wrinkled from sitting, her makeup smudged, and yet she looked more real, more alive, than she had at any point inside that ballroom. Tessa, Brianna, and Holly formed a protective semicircle around her as we walked back toward the reception tent. The closer we got, the louder the music became, pulsing through the night like nothing was wrong at all. But the moment we stepped inside, the atmosphere shifted. Conversations died mid-sentence. Heads turned. A ripple of confusion spread across the room as people noticed the bride returning with red eyes and a torn hem. And then Grant saw her. He didn't smile. He didn't look relieved. His expression darkened instantly, like a storm rolling in out of nowhere. He walked toward us with long, deliberate strides, his jaw clenched, his eyes locked on Lily with a look that made my blood run cold. "Where have you been?" he demanded under his breath, reaching for her wrist. Before he could touch her, I stepped between them, blocking his hand. "Do not put your hands on my daughter." His eyes widened slightly, as though he couldn't believe I had interfered. "Miss Ellison," he said, his voice low and sharp, "this is between me and my wife." "She is not your anything," I replied calmly, but loud enough for the nearest guests to hear. "She is leaving with me." A hush fell over the tent. Brianna moved beside Lily. Tessa and Holly flanked her, creating a barrier. More guests turned to watch, phones already being raised discreetly. Grant's parents, Charles and Evelyn Whitford, stood from their table and hurried over, their expressions tight with irritation. "What is going on here?" Charles demanded. Lily's voice shook as she spoke, but she didn't back down. "I'm leaving. I don't want this marriage. I never did. I was scared, and I need to get out." Evelyn gasped sharply. "Lily, sweetheart, you're overwhelmed. Weddings do that. Come sit, we'll get you some water." "No," Lily said, stepping back. "You all knew. You pretended not to, but you knew." Grant lunged forward. "Enough. You are embarrassing yourself." It happened fast. He reached for her again. But this time Tessa blocked his arm. Holly grabbed Lily's hand. Brianna moved forward, voice shaking with anger. "Touch her again and see what happens." The tent fell completely silent, Every guest was watching. And we were done staying quiet. Grant froze when he realized the entire room had turned against him. Dozens of eyes were fixed on his outstretched hand, and several guests were already lifting their phones, recording every second. His parents exchanged a quick, panicked glance, the kind wealthy people make only when they feel control slipping through their fingers. Charles Whitford finally stepped forward, forcing a stiff smile. "Let's all calm down. This is a misunderstanding." "There is no misunderstanding," Lily said. Her voice cracked, but her words were clear. "I'm leaving." Grant tried to speak, but Charles grabbed his arm, squeezing hard enough to silence him. Not because he cared about Lily, but because he cared about reputation, deals, and business partners watching. I wrapped an arm around Lily. "We're done here." Tessa, Brianna, and Holly formed a shield around us as we walked toward the exit. No one moved to stop us. Some guests whispered. Others looked guilty for never noticing. A few women even stepped aside with sympathetic eyes, as if silently saying they wished someone had saved them, too. Outside, the night air hit Lily like a wave. She stumbled, and I held her close. The lights of the tent flickered behind us, muffled by distance, but the weight of fear began to lift from her shoulders. "You're safe," I whispered. We reached my car parked at the far edge of the estate. I opened the passenger door, and Lily sank into the seat as if her body had finally given out. "We're going home," I told her, not to start over but to rebuild. For the first time in months, Lily exhaled without trembling. Back at my small apartment, I made her tea, draped a blanket around her, and sat beside her until her breathing steadied. She didn't say much that night. She didn't have to. She was exhausted, hollowed out, but free. And sometimes freedom is the first step toward healing. The first few weeks after the wedding felt like walking through fog. Some mornings Lily barely spoke. Other days she found small sparks of herself again, like humming while making coffee or reaching for her sketchbook. Healing wasn't a straight line, it was a slow climb with uneven steps. But she kept climbing. With time, Lily returned to the things she loved. She worked on small design projects at home, creating mood boards and sketches that reminded her she still had talent, vision, and a future. I handled the budgeting, the paperwork, and the parts of business she wasn't ready to face yet. We became a team again, stronger than before. A few months later, she took on her first real client, a young architect named Ethan Brooks who needed design help for a downtown loft renovation. He met her at a local cafe, arriving with a rolled blueprint under his arm and an apologetic smile for being 2 minutes late. From the beginning, Ethan was different. He listened. He asked questions about her ideas, not her appearance. He valued her input, not her obedience. When she hesitated over decisions, he didn't pressure her. He simply laid out options, encouraging her to follow her instincts. Their meetings grew more frequent. Sometimes they discussed color palettes. Other times they talked about childhood stories, favorite parks, or the kind of quiet places where a person could breathe. Lily laughed more around him than I had seen in a long time. But what mattered most was that Ethan never rushed her. One evening, while they reviewed plans at the cafe, he looked at her gently and said, "You never need to explain anything before you're ready." That was the moment Lily told me she felt something new. Something safe. Something real. And for the first time since the day she slipped that note into her bouquet, Lily allowed herself to imagine a life built on trust instead of fear. A year after the disastrous wedding that never truly happened, Lily stood in front of a mirror again. But this time she wasn't trembling. Her eyes weren't wide with fear. Her smile wasn't painted on. She looked calm, radiant, and certain. Ethan had proposed on a quiet afternoon in the city park, under the shade of an old oak tree. There was no grand show, no audience, no pressure, just a simple question and a promise that he would always choose respect over control, partnership over power. Lily said yes without hesitation. Their wedding took place in a small botanical garden, surrounded by close friends, a few relatives, and soft music that drifted through the air like a warm breeze. No chandeliers, no marble halls, no guest lists full of strangers, just 30 people who genuinely cared about them. Lily wore a simple dress she designed herself, elegant and soft, the kind that let her move freely. Ethan wore a light gray suit and could not stop smiling at her. Every time their eyes met, it was as if they were speaking a quiet language only they understood. When the officiant declared them married, the crowd clapped gently, not in spectacle but in sincere celebration. Lily looked happier than I had ever seen her. Then came the bouquet. But she didn't turn her back to the crowd this time. Instead, she walked straight toward me. She placed the bouquet in my hands with a smile that carried no fear, no weight, no shadows. "This is for you, Mom," she whispered, "because you saved my life. And because you deserve your own happiness too." I held the bouquet to my chest, feeling its warmth instead of its warning. This time, there was no hidden note. Only gratitude. And the beautiful truth that both of us had finally found freedom. As the ceremony ended and guests drifted toward the reception tables, I stayed where I was, holding the bouquet Lily had placed in my hands. The last time I held one at her wedding, it carried a cry for help. This time it carried hope. It carried peace. And it carried the reminder that even the smallest moment can change the course of a life. Watching Lily and Ethan laugh together, I understood something with absolute clarity. Love is never supposed to feel like fear. It is never meant to shrink a person, silence them, or make them question their worth. Real love gives space. Real love lets you breathe. Real love never asks you to disappear so someone else can shine. If this story stayed with you, I hope you will like the video, share it with someone who might need it, and comment where you are watching from. Your support helps bring more stories to life,